My parents helped my brother hide his affair with my wife years later. They came begging. The day my parents showed up at my door begging for help, I almost did not recognize them. My mother looked 10 years older. My father could barely look me in the eye. And behind them stood my older brother, the same brother they had protected my entire life, the same brother who slept with my wife, the same brother they helped hide the affair for nearly a year. 7 years earlier, those three people destroyed my marriage, lied to my face, and told me to move on. So I did. I moved on so completely that when they came begging, they had to ask a neighbor if I still lived there. My name is Ethan Brooks. I was 34 years old when I learned the truth. At the time, I thought I had a good life. Not perfect, but stable. I had a steady job as an operations manager for a logistics company in North Carolina. I owned a small house, I had savings, a wife I loved, and a family I still tried to believe in. My wife's name was Hannah. We had been married for 6 years. She was warm, social, and the kind of person everyone liked immediately. At least, that is how she seemed. My older brother's name was Mason. Mason was 3 years older than me, and he had been the golden child from the day he was born. If Mason failed, my parents blamed stress. If Mason lied, they said he was embarrassed. If Mason hurt someone, they said he did not mean it. If I reacted, I was dramatic. That was the pattern of my life. Mason made messes. I was told to forgive him. Mason borrowed money. I was told family helps family. Mason broke promises. I was told nobody was perfect. By the time we were adults, I understood something. My parents did not love Mason more than me. At least, I do not think they did. But they protected him more. And over time, protection became permission. Permission to lie. Permission to use people. Permission to avoid consequences. For years, I tried to keep some distance. Not because I hated him. Because being around Mason was exhausting. He always needed something. Money. Attention. Sympathy. A job reference. A place to stay. A second chance. Then a third. Then a 10th. Hannah used to tell me I was too harsh on him. She said he was charming. Funny. Misunderstood. I thought she was just being kind. Now I know she was defending him long before I knew why. The first signs started small. Mason began coming over more often. At first, it was family dinners, football games, a weekend barbecue. Then it became random visits. He would stop by when I was at work. Hannah said he needed advice. Or he was dropping something off. Or he was lonely. I did not question it. Because she was my wife. And he was my brother. Trust makes betrayal possible. That is the part nobody tells you. The people who hurt you the deepest, usually are not strangers. They are the people you never thought you needed protection from. One evening, I came home early from work and saw Mason's truck leaving our driveway. Hannah was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked startled, too startled. I asked why Mason had been there. She said he came by to borrow tools. I checked the garage. No tools were missing. When I asked again, she laughed. You are being weird. That word stayed with me. Weird. Not concerned. Not observant. Not right. Weird. From that point on, every time I questioned something, Hannah made me feel like I was the problem. If I asked why Mason texted her so much, I was insecure. If I asked why she deleted messages, I was paranoid. If I asked why she smiled at her phone late at night, I was controlling. Eventually I stopped asking. Not because I believed her. Because I was tired of being made to feel crazy. Then came the anniversary dinner. Our 6th anniversary. I made reservations at a restaurant we loved, bought her earrings, left work early. When I got home, Hannah was already dressed. Not for dinner with me. For going out. She said Mason had called. He was having a crisis. He needed someone to talk to. I stared at her. Tonight? She sighed like I was being selfish. He has nobody else. That sentence was ridiculous. Mason had our parents, friends, co-workers, an entire phone full of people. But apparently, on my anniversary, he needed my wife. I told her not to go. She went anyway. That night, I sat alone at the restaurant for 20 minutes before walking out. Hannah came home after midnight. She said Mason had been crying. She said he needed emotional support. She said I should be more understanding. I slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. The next morning, my mother called. Before I told anyone anything, that was the first clue. She said Hannah had told her what happened. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. Your brother is going through a hard time, Ethan. Do not make this about you. Do not make this about me. My anniversary, my wife, my brother. And somehow I was being selfish. I did not know it then, but my mother already knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to protect him. Enough to pressure me. Enough to keep me quiet. Over the next few months, the tension in my marriage became unbearable. Hannah was emotionally gone. Mason was always nearby. My parents suddenly became obsessed with peace. Every family gathering included the same message. Do not judge Mason. Be patient with Mason. Support Mason. Forgive Mason. At first, I thought they were talking about his usual failures. Job problems, debt, alcohol, bad relationships. I did not know they were preparing me, softening me, conditioning me to forgive the unforgivable. The truth finally came out on a rainy Friday afternoon. I was supposed to be out of town for a work conference, but the conference ended early. I changed my flight, did not tell Hannah. I wanted to surprise her. That still feels cruelly ironic. I landed just after noon, picked up flowers, bought the coffee she liked, drove home thinking maybe we could repair whatever had been broken between us. When I pulled into the driveway, Mason's truck was parked behind the house. Not in front. Behind. Hidden from the street. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. I sat there for almost a full minute, just staring. Part of me already knew, but knowing and seeing are different things. I walked through the back door quietly. The house was silent. Then I heard laughter from upstairs. Hannah's laugh. Soft. Intimate. Then, Mason's voice. I moved toward the stairs. Every step felt like I was walking into my own funeral. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it, and there they were. My wife. My brother. In my bed. For a few seconds nobody moved. Hannah screamed. Mason jumped up. I stood there holding flowers like an idiot. Like some pathetic husband in a movie. Only this was not a movie. This was my life. Mason started talking first. Ethan, listen, I turned and walked away. Not because I was not angry. Because I was afraid of what I might do if I stayed. I heard Hannah crying behind me. I heard Mason shouting my name. I heard my own heartbeat louder than both of them. I got into my car, drove to a hotel, and turned off my phone. When I turned it back on the next morning, I had 56 missed calls. Hannah, Mason, my mother, my father, my mother again. That was when I knew. Mason had already run to them. Like always. I listened to my mother's first voicemail. She was crying. But not for me. Ethan, honey, please do not do anything drastic. Your brother made a terrible mistake. A mistake. That word was the first nail in the coffin. Because what I saw was not a mistake. It was not confusion. It was not weakness. It was a choice. And soon I would learn it had been a choice they all helped hide. I listened to every voicemail. Each one made things worse. Not because they were angry. Because they all sounded exactly the same. Nobody was asking if I was okay. Nobody was asking what I needed. Nobody was apologizing. They were all trying to manage the situation, control the damage, protect Mason. Again, my father's voicemail was the shortest. Ethan, call us. We need to talk. Not I am sorry. Not I cannot believe he did this. Just, we need to talk. I knew exactly what that meant. 3 days later, I agreed to meet them. Not because I wanted reconciliation, because I wanted answers. I drove to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. The same house where I grew up. The same house where Mason had always been protected. The same house where I was about to learn just how deep the betrayal went. When I walked inside, everyone was already there. My mother, my father, Mason, and unbelievably, Hannah, sitting beside my mother, crying, like she was the victim. For a second, I could not even speak. Then I laughed. A short, bitter laugh. My mother immediately stood. Ethan, please. I ignored her. I looked directly at Hannah, then at Mason, then back at my parents, and suddenly something became clear. This was not an intervention. This was a defense meeting. A meeting designed to convince me not to destroy the family. My father motioned toward a chair. Sit down. I stayed standing. No. Silence filled the room. Then my mother started crying. Again. Ethan, we are all hurting. That sentence almost made me leave. Because no. We were not all hurting. I was hurting. Mason was scared. Hannah was guilty. And my parents were worried about Mason. There was a difference. Then Mason spoke. For the first time since I caught them. I am sorry. I looked at him. You should be. His face tightened. My father immediately stepped in. Ethan, there it was. The protection. Automatic. Instant. Like a reflex. I turned toward him. What? We are trying to have a productive conversation. A productive conversation. About my wife sleeping with my brother. The absurdity was unbelievable. Then I asked the question that changed everything. How long? Nobody answered. I looked at Hannah. How long? She lowered her eyes. Mason looked away. That was answer enough. But I wanted numbers. Truth. Reality. Finally, Hannah whispered. 10 months. The room spun. 10 months. 10 months of lies. 10 months of family dinners. 10 months of holidays. 10 months of watching me sit beside them while they smiled in my face. Then I asked another question. One simple question. When did Mom and Dad find out? The room instantly froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And that silence told me everything. My stomach dropped. Slowly. Terribly. Because suddenly I understood. I was not discovering an affair. I was discovering a conspiracy. I looked at my mother. When? She started crying harder. I looked at my father. When? My father's face turned pale. Finally, my mother whispered. 6 months ago. I honestly thought I misheard her. What? 6 months. The room went completely silent. My hands started shaking. Not from sadness. From rage. Pure rage. I stared at both of them. You knew? My mother nodded. Crying. We thought they had ended it. I laughed. A harsh laugh. The kind that comes when something hurts too much. You knew my wife was sleeping with my brother? We did not know what to do. I looked at my father. And your solution was saying nothing? My father swallowed hard. We were trying to protect the family. There it was. The sentence. The sentence that explained my entire life. Protect the family. Except somehow protecting the family always meant protecting Mason. Never me. I stepped closer. You let me sit at Christmas dinner. Nobody spoke. You let me invite them into my house. Silence. You watched me celebrate my anniversary. More silence. And then the realization hit me. The anniversary. My mother knew. When she called me the next day. When she defended Hannah. When she told me not to make it about myself. She already knew. My own mother already knew. The betrayal suddenly felt bigger than the affair itself. Because Hannah owed me loyalty. Mason owed me loyalty. But my parents? They owed me honesty. And they chose him. So, essentially, honesty. Again. Just like they always had. Then Hannah started crying harder. Ethan, please. I turned toward her. Immediately. Do not. She stopped talking. Good. Because I was done listening. For years I thought Mason was the problem. At that moment, I realized he was not. He was a symptom. The real problem was that nobody ever forced him to face consequences. Not once. Not when he lied. Not when he borrowed money. Not when he cheated. Not when he hurt people. My parents spent 40 years teaching him that someone would always save him. Now they were asking me to continue the lesson. My father finally spoke. What do you want us to do? I stared at him. The question itself was insulting. Because he still did not understand. I did not want anything. I wanted what should have happened 6 months earlier. The truth. Then my mother said the sentence that ended everything. He is still your brother. I remember looking at her. Really looking at her. And realizing she did not understand me at all. Not even a little. Because in her mind, family was an excuse. A shield. A free pass. I shook my head slowly. No. My voice was calm. Almost too calm. He was my brother. The room became silent. Then I looked at Hannah. I am filing for divorce. She started crying. I did not care. Then I looked at Mason. You are dead to me. His face went white. Good. For once, he felt something. Then I looked at my parents. And said the words that hurt them the most. If either of you contacts me after today, I am blocking you too. My mother gasped. My father stood up. Ethan, do not do this. But I already had. The decision was made. Not in that room. Years earlier. The moment they chose protecting Mason over telling the truth, I walked toward the door. My mother followed me, sobbing, begging, pleading. I never turned around, because some betrayals do not happen in a moment, they happen over years, one choice at a time. And that day, I finally stopped pretending my family was different. The divorce became final 6 months later. I sold the house, changed my number, moved to another state, started over, completely alone. At least that is what I thought. Because 3 years later, I would discover something even worse. Something that would explain why my parents had worked so hard to protect Mason, and when the truth finally came out, it would destroy all of them. Leaving my family behind was the hardest thing I had ever done. And also the healthiest. The first year was not easy. People like to imagine that cutting toxic people out of your life feels empowering. Sometimes it does. Most of the time, it feels lonely. I moved nearly 800 miles away to Tennessee, changed jobs, bought a small apartment, started over, completely. No family dinners, no holiday calls, no awkward conversations, no Mason, no Hannah, no parents trying to convince me that betrayal was not really betrayal, just silence. For the first time in my life, silence felt peaceful. Work became my focus. I worked harder than ever. Long hours, weekend projects, extra certifications, anything that moved me forward. And eventually it paid off. 2 years after the divorce, I was promoted to Regional Operations Director. 3 years later, I became Vice President of a growing logistics company. The money improved. The opportunities improved. Most importantly, I improved. Therapy helped. Time helped. Distance helped. The anger slowly disappeared. The pain never completely vanished, but it stopped controlling me. Eventually, I even started dating again. Not seriously at first. Just enough to remember that not everyone lies. Not everyone betrays. Not everyone leaves scars. By year 4, I finally felt like myself again. Then my sister called. The first family call I had answered in years. I almost ignored it. Almost. Something told me to answer. Hello? Her voice sounded nervous. Ethan. Immediately I knew something was wrong. My sister and I had always been close. She was not part of what happened. She knew about the affair only after I did. Unlike my parents, she never defended it. She never asked me to forgive anyone. She simply respected my decision and stayed out of it. What happened? Long pause. Then she sighed. It is Mason. Of course it was. Some things never change. What about him? Another pause. Said. Then. He is living with mom and dad again. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. What happened to Hannah? Silence. Then my sister answered. They got married. That surprised me. Not because I cared. Because I honestly did not think they would last. Relationships built on betrayal usually collapse under reality. Apparently I was wrong. At least partially. They have been married for 3 years. 3 years. Interesting. Then came the next sentence. They are having money problems. Now that sounded familiar. Mason and money problems had been inseparable since childhood. According to my sister, Mason had jumped between business ventures. Again. A construction company. An online store. A consulting business. A cryptocurrency project. Each one failed. Each one cost money. Each one ended with excuses. And every time my parents stepped in. Again. Exactly like before. My father helped pay debts. My mother refinanced part of their home. Retirement savings were used. Credit lines were opened. Loans were taken. All to help Mason. All to save him. All to prevent consequences. And just like before, the consequences only got bigger. By year 5, my parents had invested nearly everything into Mason's newest business. A logistics brokerage company. Ironically, it was the same industry I worked in. The difference was simple. I built mine honestly. Mason built his on promises. Big promises. Unrealistic promises. Dangerous promises. My sister told me she warned them. Repeatedly. So did several relatives. Nobody listened. Because whenever reality and Mason collided, my parents always chose Mason. Then came the phone call that changed everything. One rainy Thursday afternoon, my sister called again. This time she was crying. Ethan, what happened? The answer came immediately. Mason took the money. I sat upright. What money? The retirement money. My stomach tightened, because suddenly I understood. The same parents who protected him from consequences for 40 years had finally become his next victims. My sister explained everything. Mason's business was not successful. It never had been. For months he had been hiding losses, lying about profits, creating fake reports, moving money between accounts. The whole thing was a disaster. Then one morning he disappeared. Completely. Phones disconnected. Office closed. Bank accounts emptied. Gone. Along with nearly every dollar my parents had left. The amount was staggering. Over $600,000. Retirement savings, home equity, investment accounts, everything. My father nearly suffered a heart attack. My mother stopped eating. And Hannah, she left him within weeks. The woman he destroyed my marriage for abandoned him the moment the money disappeared. The irony was almost unbelievable. 7 years earlier, they betrayed me for each other. Now they were betraying each other. Exactly the way they had betrayed me. For the first time since leaving, I felt something close to karma. Not satisfaction, not happiness. Justice. Because the same man my parents protected had finally turned on them. The same way he turned on me. The same way he turned on everyone else. Then my sister told me something that made my chest tighten. My father had finally admitted the truth. Not about the money. About me. Apparently after Mason vanished, my father sat in silence for nearly an hour. Then he looked at my mother and said, "We lost the wrong son." When my sister repeated those words, I did not know what to feel. Because for years that was all I wanted. Acknowledgement. Validation. The truth. And now, that it had finally arrived, it felt empty. Because some realizations come too late. My sister continued. They want to contact you. I laughed. A tired laugh. Of course they do. Because that is what happened every time Mason destroyed something. They looked for the reliable son. The responsible son. The backup plan. Me. But this time was different. This time they were not calling because Mason needed saving. They were calling because they needed saving. And 6 months later, I would open my front door and find all 3 of them standing there. My mother. My father. And a broken version of Mason I barely recognized. Begging for help. Begging for forgiveness. Begging for a second chance. The same people who once told me to move on. The same people who chose betrayal over truth. The same people who destroyed my marriage. And in that moment, I would have to decide whether family deserved one final chance. Or whether some bridges should remain burned forever. The knock came on a cold Saturday afternoon. I already knew who it was. My sister had warned me a week earlier. They are going to try. She was right. What? When I opened the door, My mother immediately started crying. My father looked exhausted. Older. Smaller. Defeated. And standing behind them was Mason. For a moment, I honestly did not recognize him. The confident smile was gone. The expensive clothes were gone. The arrogance was gone. The man standing on my porch looked like someone who had not slept in weeks. Nobody spoke. Not at first. Then my mother whispered, "Ethan. 7 years. 7 years since I had last seen them. 7 years since they chose Mason. 7 years since they helped hide the affair. 7 years since they told me to move on. And now they were standing in front of me with nothing left." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not because I hated them. Because I was not ready to let them back inside my life. My mother started crying harder. "We are sorry." Those words should have felt satisfying. For years I imagined hearing them. For years I imagined this moment. Instead, I felt tired. Very tired. My father looked directly at me, for the first time in a very long time. Then he said, "We were wrong. No excuses. No explanations. No blaming circumstances. Just truth." And somehow that made it harder. Because I could argue with excuses. I could not argue with honesty. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Mason stepped forward. "Ethan." I immediately raised a hand. "No." He stopped talking. Good. Because I was not ready to hear his voice. "Not yet." My mother wiped away tears. "We lost everything. I already knew. The house, the retirement accounts, the investments, the savings, gone. All gone. Because the son they spent 40 years protecting finally turned on them. The irony was not lost on any of us." Then my father surprised me. "We did not come for money." That got my attention. Because honestly, I assumed they had. "What do you want?" My father looked away. Ashamed. Then he answered. "We wanted a chance to apologize." I stared at him, trying to decide whether I believed him. Then he continued. "Not because we are broke." A pause. "Because we finally understand." And there it was. The thing I had wanted for years. Understanding. Not forgiveness. Not guilt. Understanding. My mother started crying again. "We chose the wrong person." Those words hurt more than I expected. Because I had waited my entire life to hear them. Then Mason finally spoke. His voice cracked. "I ruined everything." For once, nobody rushed to defend him. Nobody interrupted. Nobody softened the truth. My father did not protect him. My mother did not excuse him. They simply stood there. Silent. Because there was nothing left to defend. Mason looked older. Broken. Defeated. And for the first time in his life, completely alone. Then he said something I never expected. "I was jealous of you." I frowned. "What?" His eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. Not manipulation. Not self-pity. Real tears. "You always had what I wanted." I stared at him. Because the statement was absurd. "What are you talking about?" He laughed bitterly. "You had discipline." Silence. "You had respect." More silence. "You had people who trusted you." The irony nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Because growing up, I thought Mason had everything. The attention. The praise. The protection. The freedom. Apparently he had been looking at my life the same way. Then he lowered his head. "I spent years trying to take what you built because I did not know how to build anything myself." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because deep down, we all knew it was true. Not just about Hannah. About everything. Every job. Every business. Every relationship. Every opportunity. Mason did not create. He took. And eventually there was nothing left to take. Then came the hardest moment. My father stepped forward. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was afraid I would walk away. Maybe he was. "We failed you." Simple words. Powerful words. True words. "We spent so much time protecting him that we stopped protecting you." I felt something tighten in my chest. Because that was the truth. The entire truth. Not the affair. Not the money. Not the betrayal. That. They spent decades saving Mason from consequences. And in doing so, they sacrificed everyone around him. Including me. My mother broke down completely, sobbing. The kind of crying that comes when denial finally dies. "We should have told you." Yes. "We should have stopped it." Yes. "We should have chosen you." The silence afterward felt endless. Because there was nothing left to say. Every excuse was gone. Every lie was gone. Only truth remained. Then, my father asked the question. The question they traveled 800 miles to ask. The question they had been building toward since arriving. "Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at all three of them. The parents who betrayed me. The brother who destroyed my marriage. The family I spent 7 years trying to forget. And I realized something. I was not angry anymore. Not really. Anger had burned out years ago. What remained was distance, perspective, peace. Finally I answered. "I forgave you a long time ago." My mother's eyes widened. My father's shoulders dropped. Mason stared at me. Confused. Then my father asked, "If that is true, why did not you contact us?" Because forgiveness and reconciliation are different things. Most people do not understand that. I looked at him. Because forgiveness does not erase consequences. Nobody argued. Because nobody could. The consequences were standing right there. A lost house. A destroyed retirement. A broken family. A son who spent his life running from accountability. And parents who spent their lives helping him do it. Then I said something none of them expected. "I will help you." All three looked shocked. Even Mason. I held up a hand. "Not financially forever." Their faces fell slightly. "Good. Because that was not happening. I am not rescuing anyone." I paused. "But I will help you find an apartment." My mother started crying again. My father looked relieved. Mason looked ashamed. As he should. For the next several weeks, I helped them find a small place to live. Nothing luxurious. Nothing impressive. Just safe. Affordable. Honest. For the first time in their lives, my parents started living within their means. For the first time in his life, Mason had to work a normal job. No shortcuts. No schemes. No investors. No rescue plans. Just work. Real work. And strangely enough, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. A year later, my father called. Not because he needed something. Just to talk. A year after that, my mother visited for Thanksgiving. Not to cry. Not to apologize. Just to visit. Slowly, carefully. A relationship began to rebuild. Not the old relationship. That one was gone forever. Something new. Something honest. As for Mason, he never became successful. Never became rich. Never became impressive. But he finally became accountable. And honestly, that was a bigger achievement than any business he ever started. Looking back now, I realized something. The affair was not what destroyed my family. The affair simply exposed what was already broken. The real damage happened years earlier. Every time my parents protected Mason from consequences, every time they chose comfort over truth, every time they confused love with enabling. Because love without accountability is not love, it is permission. And permission is what eventually destroyed all of us. My parents helped my brother hide his affair with my wife. Years later, they came begging. Not for money. Not for a house. Not for rescue. They came begging for something far more valuable. A second chance. And after everything, I gave them one.